Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Happy 2025. Welcome to the first My Mix Lab live stream
Get the
of the
QuickBooks
year.
mobile app. Simply snap photos.
Uh-oh.
There you go. It was me. Good to see you, Reid.
Hello, hello.
Hello,
Good to see you.
hello.
I hope everybody had a really good holiday break. I hope everybody got to take a break from audio for once. I know as much as we love working on audio day in and day out, it's also really important to take a break from audio. So I hope everybody is returning back to their studios, remembering their passwords, remembering how to turn on their computers and log in and open their DAWs and stuff, because I know for me it was a little bit of a struggle.
Reid, I'm like in slow motion still. Got back from like a clearly real vacation for the first time in a long, long time. And you know when you just like, you feel everything's slow, like, but I'll be okay. I just need a day and then I'll be okay.
What we need is a good discussion to get our mind juices flowing and our circulation going. So
Yeah.
we actually have our first question here in the chat. But before we get to the first question, of course, welcome to the 2025 first live stream here at the My Mix Lab YouTube channel. Every single week over at mymixlab.com, we post a brand new course every single Monday for you to learn beginner basics or advanced mixing and mastering techniques from Luca Pretolesi or myself. And this week is the live stream that we're doing here, but last week we dropped an Ozone 11 Master Chain course and over by yours truly, and you can even download my entire updated Ozone 11 Master Chain preset after you're done watching the course. So when you subscribe, not only do you get access to the newest weekly courses, but you also get access to the entire catalog of, what do you have, like over 250 courses?
I think around about 250 right now.
The catalog is getting up there.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And I think when you get into the website, so there's a lot of people say, okay, well, but why those courses, they're so short? Because somebody thinks it's just Instagram. Instagram is just like to get your feet wet. You just like understand what is the topic, but I strongly recommend to sign on the website and get the full experience. And what I was saying before is that interesting fact is if you go over all the courses, it's almost like having answers of all your questions as a bullet point. So, you know, sometimes you struggle with something like, oh, I'm not getting my kick and bass right on like a tech house song or anything. If you go into the MixLab website, you start just scrolling and look for titles. Just the titles will give you a good indication what you might need.
Absolutely. And obviously, if you guys have any questions, you could post it in Instagram, but the best time to get in touch with us directly is right here and now during our live streams. And we already got a few questions rolling in the comment section below. But we can, let's get to one of I saw a good one here. Someone was asking, let's say you have a Neve preamp. What's the difference between running it through a Universal Audio Apollo or a Focusrite Scarlett Solo? Let's see.
Go ahead, Reid.
I'd say the difference would be conversion, and that's where you get different interfaces at different price points. What's the difference between an interface with two inputs that costs $1,000 or one that costs $200? I would have to say it'd be the conversion. Do you have any ideas on that, Luca?
First of all, we want to make sure we have the best possible source before the AD conversion. Obviously, if you have a Sony C800 microphone, most likely you're going to notice a difference before get into the AD based on your preamp. So what I try to say is if you have an amazing preamp, but you have a very cheap microphone that is not able to capture anything under 100 hertz or over 12K, you're going to feel less the difference between a cheaper interface and an expensive preamp. Now, if you go for high quality recording, so again, an expensive microphone or an acoustic guitar with an expensive microphone, now the AD conversion makes a difference. Another, based on my experience, another point of difference on AD conversion, if you capture on analog an entire mix down. So if you, let's say, you have some compression EQ hardware, and you want to just process the entire mix as a one, you want to go back into your DAW, that's the part you're going to feel a difference on quality conversion.
Absolutely. Let's see. They're saying that maybe your mic is possibly too loud. I think it was maybe my mic was too quiet in the beginning.
Okay.
So
All
maybe
right.
yours could
Oh,
just
yeah.
go-
I was too loud. There we go. I'm back.
We appreciate the feedback, guys, because
Thank
as
you,
much as we
guys.
know about audio, we actually can't hear our own audio right now.
Which is funny, right?
We have our phones muted, so we don't know if the audio is
Yeah.
good. So we're relying on the
Right,
comments here
right.
as our audio meter.
Yeah.
Let's see. So we appreciate that, guys. Everyone's giving the stream a thumbs up. Awesome. Thank you so much. We
You
appreciate
got
it.
it. You got
And
it.
yeah, here on our YouTube channel, there are a few courses, but the real deep dive and the real sauce is over at mymixlab.com when you subscribe and get access to everything. So
Yeah.
if you guys haven't checked that out yet, we absolutely recommend it. Our shorts and Instagram reels are just like a little quick preview of what you get when you subscribe. That being said, I was talking about this with Luca a little bit earlier. If any of you guys are Melda plugin users, I heard they just updated every single Melda
Today,
plugin in their
right?
catalog today.
Yeah.
So if you haven't downloaded that update, go get it yet. I know I'm doing that as soon as I
Yeah.
get home because I love Melda plugins.
You know the little frustration when you are in vacation and you say, okay, I'm gonna unplug from everything from the studio, recharge myself, and go back after the holiday. But then they tease you with like new update on plugins and then the new Pro Q4, everything. So it's like I wanna stay away from my computer, but then you are you have this nice plugin in front of you wanna try.
Yeah.
So
Oh man. Pro Q4 made it really tempting to not use my computer this holiday
Right.
season.
same for me. So I actually downloaded on my laptop and I spent like an hour going over some functionality, and I really like it. I was very impressed. But then now this week I have a lot of work at the studio, and it's going to be the real test.
Yeah, I've actually been a little curious about that hand drawing feature. It looks really useful, but I have to try it. It seems awesome and well made. I just have to figure out if it's going to be useful to me.
I'm not sold on that one other than specific reason. Give an example. I'm not sold if you are reacting with an EQ based on the material. So if I feel my drums is like need some brightness, then I don't want to draw it. Just want to correct based on what I'm listening. I think a good way to use the drawing function of the EQ, if let's say you have a microphone, they behave in a certain way, and then you know what kind of top ends you want to build really quick, or what kind of low end you want to shape. Might be useful, but at the moment I'm skeptical. I want to just try it.
Someone asked, how do you conquer plugins not having an AAX version for Pro Tools? What's your favorite wrapper or adapter? For me, I like Waves Studioverse because they let you put any plugin you want in there, and it's also low-key a way to use VST plugins in Pro Tools.
Yeah.
And then before Studioverse, I was using Blue Cat's Patchwork.
Blue Cats, I
Yeah.
did too for a while.
Yep, I was using that and it worked really good. But yeah, Studioverse, I feel like they just have better graphics, so I kind of switched to that one when it came out.
Right, absolutely.
Good question, though. In your opinion, which is better, mixing and mastering the combination? Let's see, someone's asking Sennheiser HD650 headphones with the U80 Twin or the Focal Clear MG Pro headphones for the Audient ID4? I'll let you go first, then I'll put in my 2 cents.
I happen to have here there we go. Those are the Clear Pro with a longer cable. And what I do if I use this headphone specifically for mixing, I want to make sure that I'm running my correction. So I'm using SonarWorks at the moment to make those headphones flat. This sounds great. One of the key points to me to use these headphones is be comfortable with over 20 minutes with headphones. I feel a lot of headphones, unfortunately, after 20, 30 minutes, when I talk about comfortable headphones, it's a mix of weight on your head and then frequency response in a way that make you feel tired, especially if you mix low end and drums and bass and 808s. So there is no right or wrong on headphones. You can do an amazing job on Audio-Technica or on $100 headphones. You can use this headphone. It costs like $1,500. It doesn't matter. What really matters is your approach. So one to me is like, don't play too loud. Stay consistent, like 80 decibel, 75, 85, that range. and then try to work on a flat response headphones.
And for me, I always try to avoid overthinking the pair of headphones or comparing it to another pair of headphones, because it really comes down to what Lucas said, is how much time did you spend getting familiar with the pair that you chose. So the decision and the time that you spend leading up to making the decision is less important than the time that you invest after you make the decision to really familiarize yourself with it. But that being said, I would probably guess the Apollo would be a better sounding interface than the Audient one. And as far as which headphone pair would sound better, maybe the Focals would over the Sennheisers. But that's just a guess. I don't have too much experience with either.
And also you want to make sure the impedance of your headphones. Luckily, all the Focal, they just work really well from connected straight to your laptop to an expensive headphone preamp. They have no problem. Some other headphones like Odysseys or some old ones, they really need a lot of power to be able to feed headphones properly, especially if you're gain staging through the process, you're not pushing 0 dB. You stay like minus 12, and then you might need a powerful headphone amp in that case.
Another great question from the comments. Please do a step-by-step mastering in Isotope Ozone 11 using a club song. We actually just did that the week before Christmas. I created a course that you can go get at mymixlab.com.
That's super
right
good
now.
too, actually.
It was about 12-ish minutes long, and it uses the Ozone 11 Advanced plugin to do everything from start to finish. And you get to download the preset after. So not only do you get to watch the course, but you get to download my exact finished preset and use it in your track too. And that is only for subscribers at mymixlab.com. Awesome. Good question. Let's see. How loud is the kick in your mix, and how loud is the bass? Do you have fixed numbers that you always go to for those type of important things?
So over time, I think there is no right or wrong, especially when it's based not only on specific level, but based on what you try to get from your song. Are you going for more organic pop song that's like an 808 that it's covering pretty much all the low end with a little bit of kick, or you're going for like a big tech house track, kick and bass? So I don't think it's fair to give a specific dB level. To me, is what you try to achieve, what is the importance of the kick and bass compared to the rest of the song. So if the song is based on that, then start from kick and bass, follow your instinct as far as like how the level of the two elements working together, and build on top of that. So sometimes I feel if you are too technical and you kind of get stuck on numbers, you limit yourself. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think you have the right idea of looking at kick and bass first as your gain staging starting point, because those tend to be the things that I leave the loudest in the mix. If it's a dance song, the kick might be louder. If it's a hip hop song, the 808 might be louder. So which one takes precedence is kind of genre specific. But regardless, I always like to have at least 3 to 5 dB of headroom for the rest of the song to take up space alongside that kick. So while I'm not really worried about how loud the kick is, am kind of worried about how much headroom I have left above my kick if I know that that's going to be the loudest sound in my mix. So if you're looking for a numeric suggestion, I guess I aim for like 3 to 5, but that's not a rule. That's kind of where I just end up by accident.
I want to give a suggestion. A lot of people forget, especially if you use an 808 as a kind of bass line that moves in an octave. Just make sure that when you compare level between, let's say, a kick and an 808, you're checking every note the 808 is covering. If you have any type of phase issues, it's happening when the root note of your kick, especially if the kick is rounded, has a little bit of decay time, it's hitting on top of the 808 on the same note. So in the cancellation of the 808 and the kick might happen, will essentially change the dynamic response of the track. I don't know if it ever happened to you, but essentially you have a drum pattern that goes really, really well. But then there's a certain moment you feel you're losing the 808 or you're losing the kick. It's just because you're hitting the root note, and then there's a cancellation. So try to be very specific on that details. Make sure that you're putting in phase your kick and 808. It's important.
Let's see, the question that we were getting at when we had Frozen was about Studio One, and you were going into the details of pipeline.
Yeah.
And there was one other thing that you're talking about in addition to the pipeline plugin that really stood out to you as far as project management. Can you refresh your memory as to what that was?
Yeah, so I think Studio One was one of the first to really maximize the use of drag and drop anything on the session. So on Logic, you need to load a plugin. You need to just literally go on the insert of your input or your instrument and load essentially the plugin. On Studio One, you can just visually look the plugin, drag those plugins into the track, and automatically you create a chain. So that was like a way to maximize and speed up the process without get stuck on technical part, but just go with a better flow. So the drag and drop. Now, I started on Studio One 4, I believe. Now we got to the point of Studio One 7 Pro, where everything is being, adjusted, and even like the interface is better, the color is better. So I definitely feel to use a DAW that, for me, and there's no right or wrong, it's the car that you drive, it makes you feel happy. For me, just allow me to just don't think technical, don't get stuck on thinking on how I should find this functionality on Studio One. I just go with the flow and I maximize creativity. So I think that's the best way to describe it.
And speaking of maximizing creativity, the Studio One Pro 7 update that added splice searching into the DAW,
it's pretty cool.
Man, that was genius, because
That's so
I can't
cool.
tell you how much time I've wasted dragging things from one app to the other,
Yeah.
or maybe even scrolling past samples that could have worked in my song, but it was the wrong key and wrong tempo.
Yeah.
Studio One really figured that out. So if you
So
haven't
smart.
tried Studio One 7 for music production, mixing or mastering it, we both really recommend it.
That's so great. There's another one that I love it, not really related to me as a mix and master engineer, for producers. You can take an audio file, drag on the step sequencer, and then automatically create a pattern from the full audio loops. That way you can modify the pattern with a step sequencer. So smart and so fast. So no, I love the DAW. I can feel the passion of everyone involved at PreSonus. By the way, if you are going to the NAMM show this year, you're gonna see me on Saturday, PreSonus official panel for the NAMM show. So I'll be there answering questions and talk about the love for audio that we all share.
How do you feel about stereo low end nowadays?
Well, I'm not opposed to low end have stereo information. Again, as long we are not getting into phasing with mono information. So essentially, if you have, let's take a typical example. If you have an 808 that's purely mono, and then you have a second layer of 1 octave higher bass, and you want to just kind of play with the stereo information of the octave higher, as long you do a good job or retain the low end in mono up to 100 hertz, which of 80 hertz, that way you're not fighting on clubs where you're sending stereo information on subs and kind of create weird response. And you're also going to burn a lot of headroom. But then coming up on the second octave, you should be able to open the stereo information. And actually it's pretty good. It has to be intentional. And you need to be also intentional about how many layers you're trying to build to create those like thicker stereo information. From my experience, if you go more minimalistic, where you have few layers, very intentional, again, think about it like saturation on the second octave with stereo information, and then purely mono, sine wave on the first octave. That type of approach really works for me.
As far as stereo low end goes in my mixes, I try to avoid it unless I'm doing like a plucky bass sound where something is short and staccato and momentary. Maybe that could be really wide. But if it's like a sustained long sub, I almost always find better results with it being more centered.
Yeah.
But like I said, every bit of sound design can be different. But when it comes to like that lowest sub bass underneath, it's still kind of better to be in mono.
Especially up to 100 hertz. You don't expect to feel stereo information on the 60 hertz, 50 hertz area. It is pointless, I think.
Yeah, it kind of just takes away from the conciseness and punchiness of the sub when there's too much information down there, especially conflicting information. Let's see. Another good question I saw. Do you have return channels when you're mastering in the box?
Return channel means...
Like an aux channel. Like, are you using sends and returns and auxes when you're mastering in the box, or are you using everything as like an insert?
Oh, good point. I do use a return channel if I want to do purely parallel. I do. So, for example, I like to sometimes compress just some elements on the low end. So essentially, instead of do a parallel compression on the entire drum bus, I do parallel compression of the drum bus minus the kick drum, for example. In that case, what I do, I put an aux send on my low perk, high perk. I leave the kick out of that, and then I parallel the result of those combination low perk, high perk with the entire drums. So in that case, I'm able to bring low-level informations from the drums up into the mix without parallel the kick. That's one of the example. So I do for that particular use on mastering.
Another question about Prism interfaces. We're actually using a Prism right now. Someone asks, I'm contemplating between the Prism products, the Titan Lyra 1 and Lyra 2. What are the key differences in sound quality? Go ahead. I think it's just inputs, but...
Correct. It's literally the same conversion. The clock might be different, but I'm not sure. But it's a number of inputs and outputs, correct. Currently, right now, we are using a Titan for this broadcast. And I had experience for many years with the Lyra. I don't hear any difference in quality.
I would love to try the Lyra. I've been a Titan user for going on over 2 years now. And sometimes I just wish I could take that with me and a little bit more portable the package. So if you don't need to screw your audio interface into your desk in a rack, the Lyra is a great choice. And it gets the same sound quality.
It is.
Are there any new plugins that you're currently enjoying?
Well, there is a couple of plugins that I'm excited to try. Again, I tried the Pro Q4, but I want to spend more time this week. I want to spend more time with Melda updates. We just got it, but we need to download it. Other than that, I think I'm kind of picky now on not experiment to try too many plugins. I want to make sure that my go-to plugins are my go-to plugins, and once in a while I bring a new one in. So I will say just the Pro Q4 at the moment. And then there is some new plugin coming from us as a Studio DMI Acustica in the next few months, but I can't say much at the moment.
Someone was asking for a tutorial on the Diamond Transient plugin for my Mixlab, and we actually have one from, you might have to scroll down a bit because I believe it came out the same month as Diamond Transient.
That's correct. We have one. I'm looking to do more specific tutorial on my Mixlab based on applications. So for example, best plugin for treat transient on hip hop or like a tech house track. I want to cover more. And Diamond Transient, it's fantastic sounding plugin, but as any other plugin or any other piece of hardware, I always recommend to really understand and learn the plugin as a plugin before you apply on your own production. What I mean is, try to separate when you use a new plugin and do almost like a test run when you really understand how the plugin works. And then when you understand how the plugin works, then bring it into your session and apply that. Almost like you learn how to drive you're not going to do a Formula One with a car that you don't know. So you want to learn the car first, and then you drive. So I recommend that. But again, there is so many micro little functionality on a plugin that you should learn before you put on use on your current song.
Here's a great question, and I think a lot of people are experiencing this issue. Could you please explain to me why many of my masters feel less loud on Spotify than others? Even when I listen to Spotify, I need to increase the volume to make it sound like other people's mixes. Where may I be going wrong?
This deserves a long answer, but let's go with kind of like a bullet points of the essentials. Number one, Spotify will eventually lower the level of your track only when you turn on the loudness normalization, okay? So in that case, we'll pull down to -14. But regardless of that, if your track has a loud perceive, I would say that beside the LUFS number, as perceived louder mid-range will already translate louder than other tracks. Louder mid-range because our ears, most likely an iPhone, a laptop speakers, they have almost like an area between, let's say 500, 1K to like 5, 7K, where if you're able to compress more that part or bring it more in front, you might win against other tracks. So that's number one. Two, too much low end on your track will unbalance your song. So you're gonna hit limiting and clipping quick from the low end, and you're gonna have a little dip on the mid range. That will translate on the lower perceive volume on Spotify against other songs. So think about that. And also think about saturation to use as a way to bring microdynamics more in front of the mix.
If I had to come up with a checklist of things, or maybe like a top 5 most common problems that would lead to someone's mix being too quiet when they compare to others, from a production standpoint at least, since it sounds like you might be mixing your own productions, I would say that number one is the sound design needs to feel loud before you even assemble the separate pieces into a song. So the individual separate sounds should each on their own feel loud. And then number two, when your song is assembled, you want to do it in a way that's not cluttered. It's easy to get into this trap where layering more sounds makes you think that you're heading in a louder direction, when actually you're heading in a quieter direction. Everything needs to be playback at a lower volume so that it doesn't clip. So find sounds that work well on their own, like those EDM drops where it's just a big kick and one big synth. Those almost translate the loudest, and they have the least amount of layers, just a kick and a synth. So be very careful with the amount of layers that you have and how loud those sound on their own. And then the third thing I'd say is make sure that your mix sounds loud before you go to master. A lot of people blame their mastering when in fact the mix isn't really lending a good opportunity for the master chain to be loud. So it's easy to blame the final step, but the issue could have occurred way sooner.
Reid, I think you cover like a very important point. A mix to be a potential loud master, it's coming from the mix. So a well-balanced mix that has an average level consistently loud. So if you have a crest factor of the mix, which is like the peak level with the average, if you're able to create a control mix, then you can bring everything up on mastering. If you have too many layers, also you risk to have out of phase with too many layers. Another point, don't underestimate the key of the song. If you're picking the wrong key, then if you do like a hip hop, a trap song on a C note, then you're gonna have a lot of issues. So pick the right key. Don't overlayer, especially on low end and synth. Go for essential. And like Reid mentioned, do a quick limiting test on your mix. We are not mastering. You finish your mix, you just put a Pro L, see when the song will break. And that's a good indication of good mix down that will translate on louder mastering.
Do you have any trick for reverb when you're mixing or mastering a track?
Reverb, it's one of those things that's kind of like make a song timeless if it's done right, or just like a trendy reverb that is good for the moment that you listen to the song 3 years later it sounds dated. So to me, reverb is what you try to achieve, to make the, let's say, this synth wider through reverb, or to make an effect of the reverb, which is like a sidechain reverb, for example, or to try to bring a vocal more on a space instead of being in front of you. So it has to be intentional. I recommend don't use too many type of reverb. Pick like 2 or 3. If you like to go like for the room, for Valhalla, and like a Pro R from Fab Filter for more kind of creative reverb, and then like maybe a short plate. Always work with just a few reverb instead of using like multiple reverb that will make the song too unglued, too detached.